Beneath the scorching Egyptian sun, a pharaoh and his sisters shared a love that defied every convention. This is the story of a divine ruler and the woman who was both his queen and his sibling, a relationship steeped in power, secrecy, and a scandal that threatened to unravel their entire world. By the end of this journey, you will understand the shocking truth behind one of history's most controversial royal unions. We will explore why such a forbidden bond was not only accepted but actively encouraged, and we will question whether it was driven by genuine love or cold political calculation. When you think of a love that could shake an empire, what do you believe was its true cost? This practice was rooted in a belief system where the pharaoh was not just a king, he was a living god on earth. His blood was considered divine, a direct inheritance from the gods themselves. To dilute that blood with that of a common mortal was seen as a spiritual catastrophe, a weakening of the cosmic order they called Mot. The most powerful way to preserve this sacred essence was to keep it within the family. A pharaoh marrying his sister was the ultimate insurance policy for divine purity, ensuring the royal line remained untainted and truly godlike. This was not a shadowy secret, but a public celebrated doctrine. The mythological blueprint for this union was set by the gods Osiris and Isis, who were themselves brother and sister. Their sacred marriage was the model of creation and rightful rule, a story every Egyptian knew. By emulating the gods, the pharaoh and his sister queen were performing their divine roles, reinforcing their legitimacy in the eyes of the people. But beneath this spiritual justification lay a profoundly practical and political strategy. Concentrating power was the ultimate goal. By marrying within the immediate family, a pharaoh prevented ambitious noble families from marrying into the royal line and gaining a claim to the throne. All power, both political and religious, remained locked within one sacred household. This was a recurring, calculated practice across dynasties. Long before the famous Cleopatra, pharaohs of the 4th dynasty like Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid, married his half-sister to secure his lineage. This was not about personal desire, but about statecraft. It was a cold, deliberate system designed to consolidate authority and present an unbroken, divine front to the world. The family was the dynasty, and the dynasty was Egypt itself. Yet this divine strategy found its most dramatic expression in the lives of specific rulers. Among the most famous brother-sister pharaohs are Akhenaten and his queen, Nefertiti. While the exact nature of their blood tie remains one of Egyptology's great puzzles, inscriptions from the revolutionary city of Amarna consistently portray Nefertiti as sharing her husband's divine status in a way only a royal sibling could. Scenes carved into tomb walls show her standing as an equal beside Akhenaten, presiding over religious ceremonies with an authority that suggests a birthright, not just a marriage title. For a clearer, undeniable example, we must look to the later Ptolemaic dynasty, the Greek rulers of Egypt. Pharaoh Ptolemy II deliberately married his full sister, Arsinoe II, and they were officially proclaimed the sibling-loving gods. Their portraits were minted together on coins, a public declaration of their equal and shared power rooted in their brother-sister union. This practice continued for generations, culminating in the legendary Cleopatra VII, who first married her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, as tradition demanded. How do we know this for certain? The evidence is etched in stone and written on papyrus. Royal decrees, temple reliefs, and official genealogies list these couples not just as husband and wife, but specifically as brother and sister. Historians piece together these fragmented records like an ancient puzzle, comparing names across different monuments and cross-referencing historical accounts to rebuild these controversial family trees. The story these fragments tell is one of a calculated tradition, repeated for centuries to keep a crown firmly on a single family's head. But where does divine duty end and human emotion begin? The art from Akhenaten's reign offers a tantalizing clue. In the sun-baked city of Amarna, the carvings that survive show the royal family in scenes of startling intimacy. We see Akhenaten and Nefertiti playing with their daughters, embracing openly, their bodies bathed in the rays of the sun disk Aten. This is a radical departure from the stiff, formal portraits of earlier pharaohs. Here the king tenderly holds his queen's hand. They nuzzle noses in a gesture of affection. These are not the typical god-king depictions, but images filled with warmth and apparent familial love. It suggests a relationship that at the very least had a deep personal dimension, a partnership that went beyond mere political necessity. Could this have been a genuine bond, a love story for the ages carved in stone for all to see? The art compels us to consider that for some royal couples, the sacred union might have also been a heartfelt one. This romantic possibility, however, collapses entirely when we examine the later Ptolemaic dynasty. Here, the sibling marriage was stripped of all sentimental pretense. It was a raw, brutal power grab. Cleopatra VII, for instance, was forced into a marriage with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. Their union was not one of affection, but of political convenience, a way to share the throne as co-rulers. It ended in a vicious civil war, with Cleopatra raising an army against her own husband-brother. He famously had their sister Arsinoe executed to eliminate a rival. This was a family dynamic poisoned by ambition and fear, where marriage was a weapon and siblings were the greatest threats. In this world, love was an impossible luxury. The primary emotion was not affection, but a desperate will to survive and hold on to power at any cost, even if it meant destroying your own flesh and blood. This stark contrast forces a difficult question. Can genuine love flourish in a structure built on duty, expectation, and the preservation of a bloodline? The very nature of these unions was inherently coercive. A royal princess had no say. Her body was a vessel for the dynasty. For the pharaoh, his sister was the only woman deemed worthy to bear his heirs. Where is the room for free choice, for the organic growth of affection, when the relationship is mandated by divine law and political strategy from birth? The psychological landscape of these palaces must have been incredibly complex, a tangled web of familial obligation, shared history, and immense pressure. Historians remain deeply divided on this very point. Some look at the Amarna art and see a revolutionary shift, evidence of a unique personal connection that transcended political ritual. They argue that human emotion cannot be so easily suppressed, even within the rigid confines of royalty. Others counter that the Amarna style was itself a calculated propaganda tool, designed to showcase the pharaoh's unique relationship with his god Aten, using the family as a symbolic model. From this perspective, every tender scene was a political statement, not a private snapshot. The debate continues because the truth is likely a messy combination. For some brother-sister pairs, a genuine attachment may have developed over time, a comfort found in a shared, gilded cage. For others, it was purely a transaction, a sacred duty performed for the stability of the kingdom. The silent stones of Egypt hold their secrets tightly, leaving us to wonder about the human hearts that beat behind the divine masks. But this divine insurance policy came with a terrible, hidden price. The very purity it sought to protect could become its own undoing, as the genetic consequences of repeated sibling marriages began to manifest. The most poignant example is the boy king Tutankhamun. Modern scientific analysis of his mummy reveals a young man afflicted with a club foot, a cleft palate, and multiple genetic disorders, likely the direct result of generations of royal inbreeding. His parents were almost certainly brother and sister. The pharaoh, meant to be a perfect physical specimen of divine power, was in reality a frail and sickly individual who needed a cane to walk. The gods, it seemed, demanded a heavy toll for their exclusive bloodline. This biological fragility may have had direct political consequences. A weak pharaoh with no healthy heir, as Tutankhamun tragically proved to be, could plunge the entire nation into a succession crisis, unraveling the very stability the incestuous marriages were meant to ensure. The outside world looked upon this Egyptian practice with a mixture of shock and disdain. To their neighbors, the Greeks and the Romans, marriage between siblings was a monstrous, unnatural act. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote of the custom with clear disgust, framing it as a strange Egyptian perversion. Later, the Romans would weaponize this perception in their propaganda war against Cleopatra and Mark Antony, painting the Egyptian queen as a decadent, incestuous Oriental despot whose morals were as corrupt as her politics. This foreign revulsion had a profound impact, shaping the Western view of ancient Egypt for centuries as an exotic, mysterious, and morally suspect civilization. Even within Egypt, there are hints of religious and social friction. When the young Tutankhamun ascended the throne, one of his first acts was to formally reject his father Akhenaten's radical religious revolution, and restore the old gods. Part of this restoration involved a deliberate move away from the extreme familial closeness of the Amarna period, a subtle but significant recalibration of royal identity. The practice of sibling marriage did not disappear, but the intense, almost singular focus on the nuclear royal family as gods on earth was dialed back. The legacy of these unions is therefore a deeply conflicted one. They provided short-term dynastic stability at the potential cost of long-term genetic health and international reputation. They were a sacred tradition that secured power, yet also a source of weakness that enemies could exploit. The silent tombs and damaged statues do not tell us if these royal couples found love, but they scream a warning about the dangers of absolute power concentrated in a single, close family. The attempt to remain purely divine may have ultimately contained the seeds of a very human downfall, so the grand pyramid of power, built to last for eternity, reveals a profound crack at its very foundation. These forbidden loves were not secret scandals, but the very pillars of the state, sanctioned by divine doctrine and hardened by political necessity. The story of the Pharaoh and his sister is a complex tapestry woven with threads of absolute power, tangled family loyalty, and the faint, elusive possibility of human emotion. It forces us to confront a civilization that operated on a logic entirely foreign to our own, where the most intimate of relationships was also the most strategic. We are left standing before the silent statues of these royal couples, forever wondering about the lives they led behind their golden masks. Their world was one where duty to the gods and the kingdom came before all else, where personal desire was a luxury few could afford. Can we, looking back across 3,000 years with our modern sensibilities, ever truly understand the hearts of people who lived by such different rules? What do you believe was the dominant force in these sacred unions? Was it a profound, genuine love that transcended our conventional boundaries, or was it an unyielding, calculated duty to preserve a dynasty at any cost? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this journey into history's shadows compelling, subscribe for more deep dives into the greatest mysteries of our past.